Hey everyone, thank you for joining me for this segment of Black Spring. I just wanted to go ahead and bring you a bit of this story because of course, it's breaking by now. The story is actually breaking that Greta Thunberg is the person of the year according to Time magazine. So thank you again for being here with me for this segment of Autumn with Black Spring, or Black Spring with Autumn, whichever one you like. And I bet you're thinking now, after the year that President Trump has had, like, how could that be, right? How can Greta Thunberg be the person of the year? Well, I've done a few things in the past. I've done a few things in the past on the UN and the UN Agenda 2030. The Agenda for Sustainable Development is what I've done previously. I've basically kind of linked those between the climate change or the man-made climate change, or however you want to coin it. But it's all going back to the same thing. So, of course, you're thinking, President Trump's had this historical economy with the lowest unemployment rates, historical job growth, and a number one economy on a global stage. But then you get Greta Thunberg as the person of the year for 2019. Well, on the previous videos that I've done, the mention of education in that actual whole agenda 2030 was something that has stood out to me quite a bit. So if you'll just take a look with me really quickly here, I would like to show you. Just want to read just a little bit of this. You can do it for yourself. This comes from the TNA, the New American. It's a great source, excellent source for news, policy, you name it. Now, this is an article that was written on Monday of September 7th, 2015. Now, here, the title is "The UN Goals for Humanity Targets Children as the Agents of Change." Well, I'll say, I think Greta Thunberg is pretty much, she kind of fits the profile on this. So if we go on, we have here that the United Nations has a far-reaching global agenda for all of humanity, and your children are in the crosshairs. Now, in the UN document outlining the 17, quote, Sustainable Development Goals, quote, of its master plan, the word education alone is mentioned more than 20 times. But the UN, in its radical vision of the education of your children described as agents of change in the manifesto, goes far beyond what most parents think of as education. Now, it talks about here, indeed, the UN openly advocates the use of schools to indoctrinate all of humanity into a new set of values, attitudes, and beliefs in preparation for the new green and sustainable, quote, sustainable world order. The UN's all-encompassing scheme, which the murderous communist Chinese regime played a, quote, crucial role in formulating, was outlined in the Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Okay? So here you have, I'm giving you a little bit of landscape here. Also, here it continues to talk about the Globalist Manifesto, set to be adopted later this month by the UN's member regimes at the global organization's 70th Annual General Assembly, CONFAB, in New York. It deals with virtually every realm of human life. It is essentially UN Agenda 21 on steroids. From mandating universal health care and wealth redistribution within and among countries, to requiring a systematic mainstreaming of gender perspective and government controls to enforce, quote, sustainable consumption and production. The agenda will ensure that no one, quote, no one is left behind. That is especially applicable to your children. Now, depending on where you are in the country, you've already started to see parts of this. I will say for the left coast in the west, aka the West Coast, you have seen the education implementation for the curriculums. Now, I will just scoot down just a little bit. One of the most disturbing things, which most people are now starting to see, it's happening already. We have here, we have a section here where it talks about education. Aside from teaching reading wrong and ensuring more functional literacy in the future, the UN's education agenda also puts sex education front and center. Now, quote, by 2030, ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health care services, abortion and contraception, imagine that, including for family planning, information, and education, the document explains. Of course, the UN is already involved here, releasing its international guidelines for sexuality education in 2009. In the guidelines, the UN calls for teaching children starting at age 5 that I will let you continue to read that. Teaching children about, you can read it for yourself, but I just wanted to give you a bit of landscape for where this comes from. In fact, it's just only a piece of the larger goal here. And that larger goal would be, this is the beginning of one world government. One world, we're do everything. If the UN is dictating all the policies that the Democrats propose, those are in line with all of this. It's happening on the left coast in California. I'm sure it's probably happening in New York. But this is the globalist vision. The UN is running the roost on what they want by 2030. And your children are at the target of it. So when I see this child, Greta Thunberg, made the Person of the Year, well, yeah, she's the agent of change. You know, you got to use emotion, and you got to use all these things to get people involved. You got to appeal to the emotions, because you're running out of everything else. You're running out of appeal. So they will be able to, some people will be swayed by emotions and much, much more. But this article is jam-packed with their perspective, and it's already happening. So you need to catch up. I'm sorry to say, if you're interested, you know, maybe you don't have children. I don't have children, but you know, for society, this information is very important. So yes, but this whole climate change and man-made climate change and all of this outrage and all these outrage appeals and all these facilitating partnerships around the world, to me, it's going to be as big as the 2020 election season. They are not happy at all with President Trump for pushing back on this whole climate change, for getting us out of the Paris Agreement, the HR 9. They're not happy about that. In fact, we have another article here where the UN climate activists funded by Russia, in this article, this is another New American article, great sources, by Russia and Rockefeller mock Trump. In fact, you can see here that, let's see, you can read this for yourself. The vitriolic climate protesters funded by Russia and big oil at the United Nations COP25, quote, climate change summit in Madrid gave the United States first, second, and third place awards for being the best at being the worst. Government officials from around the world cheered on the spectacle, receiving the Fossil of the Day awards from the Climate Action Network. On behalf of the United States were 3 fake President Donald Trumps wearing Trump-style wigs and Make America Great Again hats. All of them gave speeches, pretended to be Trump, being repeatedly booed for making statements similar to Trump about climate and globalism. So I don't know. I'm just trying to. I mean, there's a lot of tactics here, but the strategy is global. Is one world government and global taxation. To me, this child is being exploited for many reasons. It has nothing to do with her earth shattering or her love of the earth, or these are not pure or absolute, campaigns. And I'm not assuming that everybody thinks that that's what it is, but I just wanted to say, for the record, that, that's where this comes from. So yeah, so here you do, she does, like, I will give you a couple of quotes from the article. This is a lengthy article. I couldn't read it all. I just looking at a couple of things in the article. It says, this is her, I quote Thunberg, "We can't just continue to live as if there is no tomorrow, because there is a tomorrow," she says, tugging on her sleeve of her blue sweatshirt. "That is all we are saying." Okay, of course, if you're tuning in to any of it, she's done her school skipping Fridays campaigns have started. And I think even one of the Carolinas was maybe one of the last ones. But then it says here that Thunberg is not a leader of any political party or advocacy group. She's neither the first to sound the alarm about the climate crisis nor the most qualified to fix it. She is not a scientist or a politician. She has no access to traditional levers of influence. She's not a billionaire or a princess, a pop star, or even an adult. She's an ordinary teenage girl who, in summoning the courage to speak truth to power, became the icon of a generation. By clarifying an abstract danger with piercing outrage, Thunberg became the most compelling voice on the most important issue facing the planet. Well, so there you go. I just wanted to show you that Thunberg is officially the UN's agent of global taxation. She's not she's not Time Magazine's 2019 Person of the Year. She's the UN's agent of change, ladies and gentlemen. And if you'd like to read more, I encourage you to have a look at the New American. They have fantastic sources of news, policy, education, you name it. It's all right there for you. So please let me know. I appreciate you. I'm sorry to take you away from all these somber hearings and articles of impeachment, citing obstruction of Congress and abuse of power. But I just thought this was pretty interesting, and didn't want anybody to. I would be remiss not to mention it, considering all the things that I've posted. And here you have it again. Your Person of the Year. So, I'd like to thank you for joining me here on this segment of Autumn with Black Spring. And please like, share, subscribe. I'll see you next time.